Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, Chris D Redefined. And if you're wondering why I am sitting in front of a Philadelphia Eagles wall hanging, it's because my Philadelphia Eagles won yesterday in a real crazy upset, probably one of the best endings to a football game that I've seen in decades. It was amazing. So my Philadelphia Eagles were about to lose to the Rams in our house at the Link, with the Rams charging down the field 27-26. We were ahead, but they were going to get into field goal range because our D couldn't hold them. They did hold off a touchdown, so got to give them credit there. And then the Rams got into field goal range, about to kick a field goal, when my defensive lineman, Jalen Carter, and Jordan Davis, both out of University of Georgia, the Georgia Bulldogs, got together. You could see them looking at each other, and then I was like, oh, they're up to something. And they blocked the field goal kick, and then the ball fell on the ground, and Jordan Davis scooped it up and ran it in for a 60-yard touchdown. He said he hadn't run that fast since the combine, and the whole team went crazy. I still have to watch all the post-game videos because I'm sure some of the dancing and craziness in the locker room it's always fun to watch. But on top of my Eagles update, and now we're number 2 in the NFC, I think, behind the 49ers. So we're ranked number 2. Of course, it's only week 3, so you can't take anything too seriously, and we've got a tough schedule ahead of us. But we did beat Dallas, Kansas City, and now the Rams. So those are all 3 of them are tough and challenging games. So really happy about that. I expected at least one loss in there, but to be 3-0, happy about that. But that's why I'm sitting in front of my Philadelphia Eagles wall hanging here. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about what I have learned in the 6 years that I have lost my son. Basically, you realize that I'm estranged from my son. If you're watching my channel, I've changed my life and moved to Lisbon, and then just redefined my life, which is why I call my channel Chris D Redefined, because I was Kai's mom and then I wasn't. So what have I learned in the 6 years? It's been like 6 years exactly this week that my son and I had a falling out, and he just moved in with his dad, and I pretty much lost him. And so what have I learned? What I've learned is, I'm an empty nester. So that makes a big difference if you're estranged from a child, but you still have a child at home, or 2 children at home, and you can't, recreate your life. You still can, but, it's a little more complicated when you're still parenting. And then, or if you're married. So I didn't have anyone else that I had to take into consideration. I just was me. And so it's tough when you're identified, especially in a small town. I lived in Kihei on Maui, the island of Maui, and it's really small. Everybody knows you. And I was also a radio DJ and a personal trainer. Everybody in that town knew me. And so, what happens is you have to redefine who you are. I was known as Kai's mom. Oh, aren't you Kai's mom? Oh, yeah, your son is on the diving team, blah, blah, blah. My son is friends with your son. And your whole life, as moms usually do, your life kind of gets caught up in being a mom. I was also, like I said, I was also a radio DJ and a personal trainer. So I had a life outside of my son. And then on top of that, I was also a hostess at a very popular restaurant on Maui. And so I had my own life, but I chose to make 90% of my world revolve around my son and his schedule and how to support him and how to be mom for him. So when I finally wound up alone without him, for quite some time, I was devastated. I was depressed. I could not imagine life without my son. It was really bad. So not to get into that, because I have moved, kind of moved on from that, and I've done other episodes where I was quite sad about that. So this episode, I want to kind of talk about what I've learned. And what I've learned is to lean into all of my interests that I did not get to manifest or make come true while I was mom. And so, although I did a lot of things that I love doing, even despite being a parent, like becoming a radio DJ and a personal trainer. So I wanted to do those things, and I did pursue them, even though I was parenting. And what I learned is that there's still other dreams that I had that I didn't pursue because I was parenting my son. And so I leaned into it. I just leaned really hard into it. I love my Philadelphia Eagles, as you can tell, and so I made my life kind of revolve around being an Eagles fan on top of all of my jobs. And I just kind of went crazy with the Eagles. I scheduled my whole life around the Eagles games and watching my Eagles podcasts, and I leaned in real heavy there because either that or I could start drinking. I didn't want to do that. I was a personal trainer, so I didn't do that. And what else did I do? And I just worked. I worked a lot. I started a business where I was teaching children online and teaching also personal training online. And so I became kind of an online personal trainer and an online teacher of certain subjects for school-age children. And then, I went into how I didn't attend my son's high school graduation and how that affected me. And I made a decision to move to Europe. Well, I wanted to move back to Europe. I lived in Germany back when the wall fell. I was actually there living in Germany when the wall fell. And so that was 89. I lived there from 89 to 93. And ever since 94, when I moved back to the US, I wanted to go back to Europe. I was like, why did I leave? I love Europe. And my life just took different turns. I wound up living on Maui. I had a baby. I was raising my son. And so I always dreamed of going back to Europe, but I was raising my son. And I didn't think I could get back here. But instead, when I became estranged, I kind of, I leaned really heavy into my interests. And so that's something that I learned, is that if you have an interest that you didn't pursue, let's say you always wanted to open your own cosmetic company, or you wanted to open your own bed and breakfast, or you wanted to go back to college and learn, and get a degree, or anything. You name it. Maybe you wanted to buy a house. Maybe you wanted to, start your own business, as I said. So when you're at that point where you don't know what to do with your life because your child is estranged and now you're just not sure of what your own identity is, what I did is I just said, well, what did I always dream of doing? And I always wanted to return to Europe. And I loved going to school. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back to Europe. And I wound up, the best way to come back to Europe and move to Portugal was to become a student. So I looked into, becoming a student. My lawyer, my immigration lawyer, said, hey, that's actually the fastest way to get to Portugal and stay here legally is to become a student. And so that's what happened. And I absolutely adore my life. I'm a student full-time, and as you can see from previous videos, and I go to school full-time, and school's starting in 2 weeks from today. So I'm a little nervous about being in level B2 of Portuguese. I hear it's really hard, but that's what you do. You just kind of figure out. That's what I did. I figured out what are my dreams that I haven't pursued since I became estranged, and then I just leaned really heavy into them. I just became obsessed with moving. I made it my mission to move over here, and now I'm here, and I've set up a life for myself here. I've been here 2 years and almost 4 months now, and I love it. I go to school and I am trying to learn Portuguese. So, and I still watch my Eagles, even though my Eagles games come on. Although last night wasn't bad, it came on. It was a 1 o'clock game back on the East Coast, so it wound up being 6 o'clock here in Portugal, which is completely doable. So I still follow my Eagles. I still work out. My gym is right across the street from my apartment, so I go right across the street and go work out every day. And I continue to teach students online, and that's it. That's my life. I go to school, I teach online, I go to the gym every day, and I still follow my Philadelphia Eagles, and I have created a life that I'm really happy about. Yes, do I wish my son and I were in better touch? Yes, I sure do. He's emailed me back like 3 times in the last 13 or 14 weeks, and I'm happy with that. But like for instance, here's a good for instance. I checked the news in his neighborhood on Oahu, and there was a shooting of a 21-year-old man, and they didn't identify him. They just said he was in critical condition. And now every night since last Wednesday, I've had to check, the Hawaii news, and see if they've identified the shooting victim. I emailed him and said, "Hey, is this you?" I shared the link with them of the story, and I said, please answer me back. I'm nervous. This is in your neighborhood, and is please answer me back if you're fine. I haven't heard from his paternal grandmother. Maybe she would have been called if it was him that's in the hospital. So that's where I sit right now. As although I'm happy, I am not in that close touch with him. He has emailed me like 3 times in the last 13 weeks, so I have to be grateful for that. But that's my advice to you, is to, if you're feeling lost after your child after you become estranged, lean into the dreams that you didn't pursue. Find out, what you always wanted to do. This, I always wanted to become this. I wanted to go back to school and get a degree. I want to open my own business, and whatever you want to do. I always wanted to, get a dog, or, volunteer more at the pet shelter, at the animal shelter, or whatever it is, at the soup kitchen. If depending on, find the dream that got lost, and start pursuing it, wholeheartedly. Throw yourself into it 100%, and that will give you like a new identity in a way. And so that's what saved me during some really rough times, once I realized my son wasn't moving back in with me. And so that's my advice to you. Lean into what your dream was before you became a parent. So that's my advice. If you find this channel interesting and helpful, please hit the subscribe button and follow me. I post shorts about what it's like to live in Lisbon, Portugal, and my opinion about Lisbon, Portugal. And then I also talk in longer format about being an estranged mom, and about my Eagles, and about politics. So my next episode will be more about politics, because I'm basically a political activist as well. All right. Thanks so much for joining me on Chris D. Redefined.